Go live. Move. Hold on one second. Okay. Sorry, everyone, if you saw me with a. We're trying a slightly different thing with CMEpalooza and how it got scheduled, and my LinkedIn link did not like it. So if you had 30 seconds of me staring at the screen, that was that was that. Sorry about that. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, wherever you may be joining us from. My name is Derek Warnick. I'm one of the co-producers of CMEpalooza, and welcome to CMEpalooza Fall 2023. If I counted correctly, I'm pretty sure that this is our 20th CMEpalooza, which is really quite hard to believe. And thank you to everyone for taking the time to join us today. We have a great agenda lined up for you, so let's get things started with our breakfast session sponsored by Med Learning Group. But before I do that, also Matt Freeze will be our moderator today. He is coming to us live from the Newark airport, so you will see some interesting background with him. Let me also bring up the slides. I didn't even do that. See what happens. I have one thing go wrong, and it takes me a moment. Okay. So our gold sponsors are Academy for Continued Healthcare Learning, Clinical Education Alliance, Med Learning Group. Our silver sponsors, Academic CME, DKB Med, Haymarket Medical Education, Helios CME, Integrity CE, Medscape, Platform Q Health Education, Red Med Ed, Talum Health. And our bronze sponsors, Answers in CME, Antidote Education Company, Bonum Continuing Education, CME Institute, CMEology, and Hippocrates CME, Excalibur Medical Education, Global Education Group, Infograph Ed, Integritas Communications, Iridium Continuing Education, MedIQ, and last slide, Partners for Advancing Clinical Education, PriMed, Peerview Institute for Medical Education, RMEI Medical Education, Vindico Medical Education, Right Medicine. There are two ways that you can ask questions during CMEpalooza. You can use our CMEpalooza text line to send in a question, 267-6660-CME. You can also open up the viewing window in YouTube, and you can click on the Watch on YouTube on the lower left corner, and you can enter in questions within the YouTube chat function. Either of these will work. Some of the more astute observers of CMEpalooza will notice that we don't have a third option, which was using Twitter or X, or whatever we're calling it now. We used to use that. We are not anymore because not very many people used it, and it made it much harder to use. So we've moved on from that. Interacting with Poll Everywhere. We will be incorporating audience response questions during this presentation via our CME Outfitters audience response system, which is essentially Poll Everywhere. So you can either download the Poll Everywhere app and join using CMEpalooza 005, or type in the following URL in a web browser at CMEpalooza 005. Either of those will work fine. I'm going to recommend you go ahead and do that now. Because we have a couple of questions coming up to the very beginning. So you can use, if you're using your phone or whatever device, go ahead and get that set up. And then our speaker disclosure, any opinions, discussions, and or conclusions expressed are those of our panelists and do not represent an endorsement by or position of their employer, its parent company, or affiliates. And so with that, I am going to turn things over to Matt.
Great. Thank you so much, Derek. Thank you to you and Scott. Amazing. 20 CMEpaloozas in, definitely a fantastic accomplishment. And it's grown a lot and brought a lot to the CME community. So thankful to have the opportunity to support it and, be able to present to everybody. Hope everybody's having a great morning. Sorry that I'm joining you from the airport. I was supposed to fly out last night, had complications with the flight. So now I'm here. But in any event, we're excited. We have a great discussion today. Go around, everybody can introduce themselves, but I'm Matt Freeze, CEO of Med Learning Group. Very excited today. We're going to be talking about partnerships and some case examples, which we're excited to share. I know we're always talking about innovation, technology, et cetera, during our talks, and certainly that's something we are very big fans of. But the patient stories, the cases, and hearing directly from them, partnering with advocacy groups, and having all these terrific opportunities to bring forward amazing CME is even more powerful. So we had a great opportunity, which we'll get into as the case study. But let me first start with some introductions and then some questions. So I'll turn it to Lauren, and then to our esteemed colleagues here at the Concussion Alliance to introduce themselves quickly. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. I'm Lauren Welch. I'm the VP of Outcomes and Accreditation at MedLearning Group, and I'm looking forward to being here today and sharing some of the results of this partnership that we were fortunate to make in the last year and a half. And I'll turn it over to the Concussion Alliance.
Hi, I'm Connor Gormally. I'm a co-founder and the CEO and internship program director for Concussion Alliance. I also speak alongside Dr. Elizabeth Sandel in the CME course about my patient perspective and thoughts on patient-centered care surrounding concussions.
I'm Malika Gormally. I'm the other co-founder of Concussion Alliance and serve as a COO. And I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Elizabeth Sandel. I am a physiatrist and a brain injury medicine specialist in my subspecialty area. I'm on the faculty at UC Davis. I am the chair of the board at Concussion Alliance and have been working with them since 2020. Thank you so much, Matt and Lauren, for having us participate in all of this. Very much appreciated.
Hello, everyone. I'm Susan Klein. I'm a pediatric neurologist and delighted to be part of the Concussion Alliance family. I presently also serve on their board as the treasurer, and I know that you're going to enjoy what we have prepared today. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone. To kick things off, we have a couple polling questions just to get everyone thinking about the topic here. The first one is for providers who are joining us. Do you include the patient voice in your instructional design? 50-50 right now. Okay. It looks like there's an effort to 45% saying 50% saying sometimes, 27% often. That's good to see. And our next question is for supporters, if you seek to fund programming that is inclusive of the patient voice. Yeah, it looks like there is an effort to, but many would like to do it more than they currently do. Okay. And finally, do you have personal experiences within healthcare that could potentially lead to an organic partnership for CE? Looks like about half, almost half do. A lot of maybes. I hope this talk gets us all thinking about these potential partnerships in our everyday lives. Okay, I'll turn it over to Matt to sort of introduce the topic and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Lauren. Great to see so many people trying to incorporate the patient voice and thinking about partnerships. We're in a space, I think, where we can create a lot of great content, but reaching organizations and the specialists is really the important part as well, right? Not just designing really great, impactful content, but working with different types of organizations, from academic and community centers to managed care organizations, associations, patient advocacy groups. These are all important ways to get the content into the right hands, but also to mold the content. So we talk about bringing the patient voice forward. Oftentimes what we're trying to do when we design an activity there is we're either working with our faculty to extend us into their patient population, to share a story or have someone that they think would be willing, able, and would make a great case study to share. The other way that we're doing that is we'll go to patient advocacy groups and we'll partner with them to either bring their story forward, or provide their resources, or just gain their perspective. A lot of times when we're designing animation for our faculty, for content for our physician and nurse audience, oftentimes we'll re-script that with a patient advocacy group, and then they'll use that with their members to share. So all different ways to do this. I think it's very important in CME to use the strength of partnerships, because there's so many organizations out there that are willing and able to take content and share it out, that have such a great need. We see the VA up here, PHF, CDC. These are just organizations we're naming and have worked with, but there's so many out there that are willing to partner, and it just brings the power of CME forward. We can go to the next slide. Lauren talked a little bit about organic partnerships, how they flourish in healthcare. One of the questions was about that. I think we can use our own experiences, our own time in healthcare, certainly in this world and in this business, but then even on the personal side. So just to share a very quick story from myself, about 2 years ago, my wife was at a baseball game watching our kids play. She had the dogs with them. They pulled her chair back when they saw another dog. She hit her head badly on the back of her head. Probably could have fallen like that 100 times and gotten right up, no problem. Unfortunately, this was that 1 in a million time, and she ended up having difficulty kind of coming back from that for a good 2-year period. We're still kind of dealing with it, but that led me to going crazy and trying to find specialists from all over the world, all over the globe, to try to help and get through a very difficult time for my family. Thankfully, I had those resources, right? Working in this space, knew how to dig things out, knew how to find patient groups, knew how to get connected. Dr. Sandel has very famously written quite a number of books on the topic. I reached out to her. She was magnificent in helping me and my family. We did lots of different visits and calls. She connected me to places in New York and Boston, and I, took my wife kind of all over these different places. And when things settled in, and we were kind of getting into a more manageable place in our lives, I reached back out to Dr. Sandel and said, look, how can we build something together? Because all of the information that we got in the upfront from physicians and from doctors was really the incorrect way to manage what had happened. And, I kind of explained what I do, and we got paired to her and the Alliance, and we decided, a great way to do this would be to put together a CME program. And she introduced me to Connor and team, and we put something really impactful together that brought Connor's story and the Alliance story together. It's impacted many people. We've had a lot of viewership. We posted in a number of places. An AMA partnership is budding from that. So you kind of do these things as you go along. Everybody has experiences in their life, whether it's themselves, a family member, and we're in a lucky position in CME where we can utilize those resources and think outside the box on how we can connect those dots. So this was an organic example for me that was personal, that I share with you. But the point of it is we can all kind of take our life experiences and make a powerful statement and bring people together to make a powerful program. So I'm thankful to the Concussion Alliance, certainly Dr. Sandel, for all that she did for me, but also for what this program did. And when you have an opportunity, we'll share the link with everybody. I would encourage you to go on and hear Connor's story and hear this. And just like many of our programs, kind of hearing that patient voice alongside the experts made such a huge difference in the way the program was. And again, not technology heavy, just a true case study, a true story of how things move and how things go, and how you can manage, and it connects everybody, I think, a little bit in the community, certainly for the healthcare practitioners when they think about shared decision making and the power of what they need to do and some of the empathy that needs to be provided by these folks. So just a quick way that this organic partnership flourished. I'll turn it to Lauren, and then we'll hear from the different members of the Alliance. But thank you for listening.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks for sharing that. And Derek, we can go to the next slide. Just a quick look at the results of this program that is still available. We've extended its accreditation. Next slide, please. So this program is called a Patient-Centered Approach to Concussion Care for Emergency Medicine and Primary Care Physicians. And our goal was to help these healthcare practitioners involved in the management of people with post-concussion symptoms to be better able to both evaluate the patient and provide care for the patient based on that individual patient situation and needs. As Matt said, we were fortunate to be able to partner with Dr. Sandel, and Connor was able to join and be interviewed and share his story in a way that was clearly impactful, as we've reached over 3,000 learners to date, which is, really shows the interest in both this topic, but I think also in hearing from a patient. We've, in our evaluations, received a lot of great feedback in that dialogue. And we saw strong gains across all of the objectives of the programming. The baseline numbers, as Matt said, are a little scary when we look at learners' ability to choose treatment for concussion for something that's so common. And it speaks to the need for us to really think, as Matt said, think outside the box and about healthcare practitioners' needs based on our own experiences, even if it's not something that we normally work on in our day-to-day work. And in the next slide, as I indicated, we had 99% of our responses to evaluations telling us that they felt hearing directly from a patient enhanced their learning experience. And over 90% indicating that they do tend to make a practice change based on this program looking at patient-centered approaches to concussion care. So very impactful, and the kudos really go to the Concussion Alliance for the messaging that they provided in this programming and the large impact they were able to have. And with that, I'll turn it over to them to share a bit more about the programming and the value they see in it, and even some of the presentations they were able to do with it. If we go to the next slide, and I don't know if Connor was gonna.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Lauren and Matt. I really appreciate it. I think that this is a really exciting moment for us and for our organization, and we were very excited to be able to share this information with providers and researchers and clinicians from around the country, promoting basically what we consider to be the, or what researchers around the world consider to be the, new standards of care for concussion, that, as Matthew's story showed and my story talks about, and Dr. Sandel and Dr. Klein's perspective will indicate as well, isn't the case for a lot of patients around the country and around the world. And so one of our goals organizationally is to help keep providers up to date. And so CME and CE content is an incredible way to do that and serve a lot more patients through educating providers. One thing we wanted to do is raise a lot of awareness about this, and we were really excited about this CE. We thought it came out fantastically, and we loved working with Med Learning Group on it. And so we submitted an abstract to the North American Brain Injury Society and International Brain Injury Association Joint Conference on Brain Injury in New York in September of 2022, which was accepted for poster presentation. And so we brought a poster to this conference of about 1,000 clinicians and researchers. Abstracts were published in the Journal of Head Trauma Rehabilitation, and it was a lot of fun to talk to people about this CE, both clinicians from private practice, clinicians from major hospitals and university-affiliated hospitals, and also researchers who, while they may not be working directly with patients in the same way, they're still integrated into this broader network of concussion care. And so, every person who stopped or learned more about the CME content, I think, was left better for it. And we really enjoyed designing it, like we say, and you'll see here in just a little snippet of the slide, we really wanted to emphasize the dialogue. Dr. Sandel, Dr. Klein will talk about sort of their perspective on patient-centered care in a little bit. And I think that was something that we really wanted to emphasize, was sort of the perspective that patients bring into it, into this conversation with their provider, but also, the responsibility that patients take. And definitely in concussion, we find patients have to take for their own care, for their own knowledge, and to help improve their own outcomes. So we were very excited about this poster presentation. It was a great opportunity for the CE course and for us as an organization. So I'll do next slide. Yeah, this is just some contact information about us. And at this point, I want to hand things over to Dr. Sandel to talk a little bit more about patient-centered care, and Dr. Klein, and then we will sort of chat as well about the organization more broadly.
Okay, thank you, Connor. Well, I think that Matt started out really talking about some of the same things that I'd like to emphasize here. I think Concussion Alliance is an organization that really models some of these themes that we see in patient-centered care. And that this term has been batted around, I would say, over many decades. The Institute of Medicine was supportive of it. CMS certainly supportive of it. And of course, it takes me back to medical school, where the emphasis was on taking the history, that is, taking the patient's story. We called it the history of present illness. I don't hear that term too much anymore. And as Matt mentioned, and I think it's very important to recognize, there have been so many wonderful things that have happened because of technology in medicine, but somehow we've lost the patient's story, the patient's voice. And we need to come back to that, especially for disorders like we see after concussion. We have patients who are presenting, and the word patient, by the way, the root of that word patient is a Latin word meaning suffering. So the patient's story is about the patient's suffering. They're coming with symptoms. They're coming with a story. And we have to get that story And of course, Connor has told that story many times. Matt told the story of his wife. These are common stories. I have been in practice since the 1980s when I finished my fellowship in brain injury medicine, and always had a population of people with concussion. We called it more often minor brain injury or mild brain injury back in the 1980s. Not so mild in a good proportion of patients. So I became an advocate for that group of patients. And the sad thing is that we are now still in a similar position to what I saw in the 1980s with patients who were misunderstood, were not allowed to tell their story, and were not getting what I would call expert concussion care, which, by the way, takes a team. So collaboration is a big part of that. But patient-centered care is moving away from the older concepts of even biomedical healthcare delivery or medicine, and certainly paternalistic models of practice. So it's really led to, I think, improved patient satisfaction, acknowledgement of patient symptoms, and a decrease in symptom burden. There have been some studies that have shown this approach actually leads to much better health outcomes. So it moves beyond the history of present illness gathering, that diagnosis approach. It really is about relationship building between the patient and the healthcare professional. And Matt mentioned empathy. That's a very important component, respect, and excellent communication. And certainly an emphasis on both prevention and healthcare, health promotion through engagement and education. Again, modeled by a lot of what Concussion Alliance is doing. And of course, striving for that individualized comprehensive care that's really just essential, because every patient has a different story. Every patient has different symptoms. So anyway, as Matt said, we collaborated here to produce what I think is an exceptional way to get information across. So there's factual information that providers want. Physicians want facts. They want a short answer to what's the best treatment. So what we've tried to provide in this CME program is both the patient's story, which shows the lack of the best practices around concussion care, but also some best practices and resources that can be helpful to providers. So I think with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Klein, who's going to talk about her perspective.
Thank you, Dr. Sandel. And it's funny how storytelling takes you to a place where you might not have expected to go, but you did anyway. That's the organic part of this presentation. Dr. Isabel Rappin is a pediatric neurologist who was an important mentor for me. And she had a folder, a manila folder, because we were in her desk, titled Patient Smart. And every time someone, a family member, a patient came in with a fact about something they were experiencing, she would write that down and put it in the folder separate from the chart. And then that was a resource that you could use to find all sorts of things that might be helpful to people. So I did this too, and I think that's the beauty of this type of continuing education that includes patient, family experience is just like that. It's more than just the storytelling aspect. It is of this happened to me, it's how this impacted me, and it deepens the understanding of the person who's learning. And if you understand how a patient experiences an illness, it really is patient's phone. So, Malika, off to you.
Yeah, we were thrilled when Matt and Lauren offered this opportunity to us. Betsy, correct me if I'm wrong, but Dr. Sandel had a slide deck that she'd been using for quite a few years. She regularly trains UC Davis Medical School residents, is that correct, in physiatry. So we started as a group. It was basically Dr. Sandel, Connor, and I. So we started with Dr. Sandel's slide deck, and the research coming out on concussion is coming out so fast that, of course, there were updates to be made with the most recent research. We're aware of that because we produce a concussion update newsletter that synopsizes new research, comes out biweekly. So that was informed by the very latest research that we had at the time. And we decided that we would break Dr. Sandel's presentations into units, which makes sense. But then after each unit, Connor would speak for 2 minutes, and he would tell the part of his story that related to what Dr. Sandel just talked about. And so there was 5 different points where Connor talked for 2 minutes. So those were carefully crafted to help the learners sort of integrate what Dr. Sandel had just taught and why that was important. And then I see how does incorporating the patient voice help healthcare providers with shared decision-making. This is a particularly misunderstood illness. And we find that a very high percentage of GPs and EDs are not necessarily up to date on the latest guidelines. And an older way of viewing concussion tended to just say, you'll be fine, just rest, you'll be fine. And I think it's really powerful to hear Dr. Sandel talking about the necessity to referring for specialty care and for multidisciplinary care, while at the same time while you're hearing what happened to a patient when they weren't referred and what happened to them. And I think that combination, it brings home the importance of appropriate referral at the appropriate time for these symptoms. Thanks. I'm sure there's things to add to that, but thank you.
Thank you, everyone. That was fantastic. We have a few questions prepared for a panel discussion, but also have had some great ones come in via the chat. So I think for the rest of the presentation, I can just sort of throw some of those questions out there. I know everyone's excited to hear more from the folks on this panel. One of the first questions, and I think we just hit on that a little bit, but with anyone else having thoughts to share, what are best practices when collaborating with patient advocacy groups when developing the content?
I just wanted to jump in. I thought that was a great answer for the value that it brings that Malika shared, specific to concussion. And I would say that really applies in many, many areas. I also think one of the goals when working with the organizations is to understand that they know the content better than we are ever going to, right? They're living and breathing this in many cases. Have an example like Connor, who's tremendously brave and smart and shares what he went through, and that story impacts so many, right? So I think letting it be known that they're in control of the content, that we're there from a CME provider to help share the story, to facilitate learning, but really allow them to extend and share their story because it's going to make an impact, and not try to put guardrails on it. So that's just something that we've learned over time in working with these organizations of these are the folks that we're trying to get their voice out there. So we really want them to be able to control it. So I think that's important. And then adding value where you can, right? In terms of tools you can share, cases, if there's things that are helpful to them, for such as the abstract, if data is helpful, if there's information or posters or tools or cases or they want in the, to extend credit, these type of things where we can be supportive. I think that's how you form a great partnership, right? Is value both ways, and getting the story out there, and that's just being a good partner. So that's one of the ways we've approached it.
Great. Another question we have here, that maybe Connor, this would be great to hear from you on. In some therapeutic areas we all work in, there can be a stigma associated with, and I think providers are wondering, what is the patient motivation to take part in such CE, or how may a provider encourage a patient to take part in this type of work?
Yeah, thank you, Lauren. That's a great question. I think that there absolutely is a lot of stigma, and with concussion in particular, and other invisible injuries or invisible disability, there is a lot of sort of over and underlying internal and external stigma that's happening as well, that needs to be considered. I think that one thing that we have been talking a lot about in terms of patient-centered care, right, is this idea of patient, emphasizing the patient and emphasizing understanding the patient. And I think that that's a big thing with patients in general and with concussion, is because patients, a lot of the times, and many of the patients that we have talked to, and in my own experience as well, haven't felt heard often or ever. I think a lot of concussion patients talk to many doctors. We get people coming to us who've seen 6, who've seen 8, who've seen 10 doctors, and they have yet to find someone who can tell them, who is listening to them, who tells them something other than, like, you're going to be fine, this is in your head, or something like that. And so with this patient perspective in CE, I think that can really emphasize the importance of hearing patients, of acknowledging patient experiences to providers, and recognizing that you as a patient have the opportunity to shift people's understanding of how they need to interact with patients like you in their healthcare practice on a broader scale, is something that, obviously is scary. I struggled so much with writing the script for that. I actually had to do, I did voice memos. I wasn't able to write. I tried and wasn't able to write it, and ended up pacing and talking into my phone with voice memos, and then transcribing that and using that as a basis, because it is really scary and it is really hard, and it's difficult to be vulnerable to a huge audience like this. But there is this greater idea that, look, like, you can shift how 3,000 providers think about their relationship with their patients, and that's really important. And that's something that is absolutely worth it, and has felt absolutely worth it. And then I just want to say, I think we talk about this responsibility for patients, and I think it's there for everything, but in particular for concussion and other injuries and conditions where research is rapidly advancing, science is rapidly changing, particularly generalists, primary care providers, emergency department physicians, advanced practice nurses, and all of the other healthcare professionals who see a lot of patients with a lot of different things. For generalists, it's really hard to keep up with everything. It's impossible. And so, with how quickly recommendations are changing for concussion, you can't expect every clinician to be up to date. And so there is onus on the patients to be their own advocate and to take some responsibility for their own education and for their own care in these situations. And that starts with feeling like you can be in dialogue with your provider. So.
Thanks, Connor. That was a great answer. Looking at some additional questions, Malika, maybe you can take this one, and others as well. If there's experience working with a patient who has a really powerful story or perspective to share, but maybe this particular patient was hesitant to share their story or offer their perspective or just work with a seat company or any, what are some strategies to overcome that?
Well, I'd say go find an advocacy group, because I think of course it's really hard for a patient to share. I mean, it's very vulnerable, and Connor might want to speak to it, but someone who has made the commitment, like Connor and I have, as an advocate, to co-found an organization and work on it. At that point, you make a decision to be more out there. But I mean, just getting a random patient to speak, I could understand. So, and I just want to mention, it's almost more Connor's question to answer. Why are you willing to talk and be vulnerable? But it does have to do with advocacy work. And I also want to mention that our website, concussionalliance.org, is the largest and most in-depth repository of information about concussions, specifically written for the patient. We make sure that it's provider relevant, but we highly recommend sending your patients to concussionalliance.org. So I know that Dr. Klein wanted to speak on something too.
Yes, did anyone else have anything to share on that topic? And then I think there is a question that we could put towards.
Yeah, I want to make sure we have time to hear from everybody here. So, I mean, I have thoughts, but let's go to Dr.
Okay,
Klein,
great.
and Dr. Sandell also.
Great. Yeah, there was a good question that I think you both may have some good insight on regarding shared decision-making with a patient in HCP, and if there's tools and resources that are available to support that. Dr. Klein, would you like to start?
That's an everyday experience for practicing physicians. Patients come in and they have things they've looked at in Google. They have open source articles that they can read. And so this is an opportunity for a CE provider to get into that space and to make them to give another avenue for shared decision-making for patients. That is the heart of the patient-provider relationship. And you don't make progress in working toward a solution until you have that set of mutual trust. And so this is an opportunity to use 21st century methodology in CME and CE preparation to show people how to do that. And I think it's really a valuable tool and something to be explored.
That's great. Yes, I loved hearing about your Patient Smart tool as well. Dr. Sandell, if you have anything to add to that, and also I think it would be great for the audience to hear just your perspective on creating this CE and your thoughts on that experience itself.
Sure. So, I'm just thinking about the typical patient who comes into to see a physician like I experienced over many years. Patients have many different symptoms. Taking the history, as we call it, can take a long time. So one of the things that I've tried to do over the years is to figure out ways to make that whole encounter more efficient. And this is one of the barriers to care for patients because, yes, they have headaches, they have dizziness, they have neck pain, They have perhaps insomnia, mental health symptoms. And so it's overwhelming for the physician who hasn't created some way to gather the symptoms, target certain symptoms for treatment, and do that, imagine, in 20 minutes, right? So one of the goals of our program, which I want to say was so fun and gratifying to work collaboratively with Malika and Connor to put this together, much more fun than putting together a PowerPoint. Many of those I've done over the years were kind of, not the most fun or gratifying. But anyway, the purpose of this program is really to help the primary care doctors have a more streamlined approach, right, to this very complex disorder that occurs in some patients who have concussions and have persisting symptoms. So anyway, that's our goal. And I think though there's lots of questions about resources, and please go to the program and to the links. And of course, you can contact me through my website, elizabethsandel.com, md.com, or certainly Connor and Malika can help you through their website contact too. So again, I want to emphasize for those physicians and other healthcare providers out there, you need some help for the evaluation and treatment of this population. So.
Great, thank you. Another question we have come in is, and maybe Matt, this might be something for you. How do you feel that having the patient perspective increases the quality of the education versus educational programs that perhaps don't touch on that patient-centered care?
Yeah, that's a good one. From my perspective, being in this industry for 20 plus years now, seeing lots of different types of programs, lots of different value adds. The patient voice and the patient story brings it home as to why we're there, what the perspective of the treatment is. And I think what Dr. Sandel said is sad but true, right? That kind of gets lost. That patient story part gets lost, and getting to know your patients and the time that you're with your patients as physicians and providers gets shorter and shorter and shorter. So you're not always getting to hear the full story or understand that perspective due to many different barriers, and programming that incorporates that allows it to happen, right? So I just think it's a really important way. I think there's certainly value to programs that don't have it, right? There's clinical data that needs to get out there. There's information, but if you can, and it's a fit with your learning objectives, I think the impact is far greater when you're able to share a true story and collaborate with an organization, like this one or others that, do such good and want to get their information out there. And it does provide a great outcome. One of the other questions is around outcomes, and Lauren, you might want to touch on it, but, I think we are able to use the outcomes. We're able to share it with our stakeholders, certainly when we do programming, but then these organizations get it. And you saw indications where they put abstracts together, they get published, their information gets farther and wider, right? So there's a value in taking the outcomes we create in the CME and providing it to our patient advocates and those organizations. We've seen that in Alzheimer's and the work we've done there, where that Alzheimer's Association has taken that to the Hill and gotten more resources from government based on some of the outcomes that they put forward, and our program was included in there. So I think partnering with organizations, not just in the upfront, but on the outcome and sharing it provides a lot of value, because then there's a reason, again, for them to continue to educate, continue to drive funding to make awareness. So I think it comes full circle with that, and CME is a great opportunity to do that.
Yeah, 100%, Matt. It's really, really important that we share the results of these programs with our partners. We should always be thinking outside of our normal stakeholders. We talk about that a lot. But when you have a joint effort like this, not only are you showing the value of CE, which is something we all work on every day, but you're also providing really valuable data for that patient advocacy group to then share their story and get support for what the important missions that they have. I think at the end of the day, when you can share those outcomes, it really demonstrates how these kind of partnerships are mutually beneficial, in addition to being part of all of our overall mission with our work. And I know we're getting close on time. We only have 5 minutes left. So we have one more question here that I'll put out there, but also if anyone has any additional comments they wanted to make, please do so. This one was for the Concussion Alliance. How do you decide which providers to work with when you're trying to share your story? Are there certain values or qualities you look at, even choosing to share that poster at Brain Injury? How do you make those sorts of decisions?
That's a great question. I'm sure Malika will also have some insight on this. Frankly, I think we were very lucky. The theme of this talk is organic partnerships, that Dr. Sandel has been working with us for many years now, and came to us with this opportunity after talking with Matthew, and so that sort of process happened really organically. But in general, I think we really want to prioritize and center patients. And I think that working with an organization where there is a real focus on collaboration, where there is opportunities to provide, to kind of do things in new and innovative ways, new methodologies, or kind of different non-standard structures to the program, like we were able to do with this sort of back and forth conversation that the CME course really, I think, takes and runs with, is something that we were definitely thinking about as well. And then, organizations, I think, if there's a history of success in terms of publicizing and getting the word out about their CE programs, I think is really amazing. We're really excited with the statistics that we've been hearing, the outcomes from the program, and we're pumped to share those, and talk about the successes that we've had there, and hopefully leverage that into more success. I don't know, Malika, do you have any other thoughts on that?
Not actually. I think there's some idea that we might play a clip from the CME. Is that possible, Lauren?
That's a fantastic idea. Unfortunately, I think we're just about at time.
Oh, okay.
We're till 9:55, but
yeah,
Eric, if we share the link of the programming with you, if you have a way of sharing that with the audience, as well as the Concussion Alliance website.
Sure, we can add a link onto the website on the agenda page. We'll put a link up there for people. Sure.
Yeah, and can we, while we wrap up here and give final thoughts, sorry, could we get the last slide with the contact info up so people can get another opportunity to take a look at that? Yeah, so please see our resources at concussionalliance.org. Like I said, it is the largest and most comprehensive and best repository in breadth and depth of, again, evidence-based, accessible, patient-facing, provider-relevant resources on concussion. There's over 50 resource pages about concussions, about treatments, about population-specific considerations. We aggregate provider search tools to help you find accredited providers once you have figured out what structures have been disrupted or systems have been disrupted, and what treatments exist for those systems that have been disrupted, and what providers treat those systems. We just launched accessibility resources on our website. So now we have a screen reader tool. You can change the text, the font size and the background and the font color. I think it supports over 150 languages for translation, and I think 60 or 70 languages for reading. So we're trying to do accessibility, and we just would really love to thank Med Learning Group again, Matthew and Lauren, for having us here and for bringing us onto this panel to talk about this story. Concussionalliance.org/CME is where you can find our post about it and the link to the CME if you can't find a direct link through Med Learning Group. But shout outs to Matthew and Lauren, and thanks to Derek for running this. And I'll thank you so much to Dr. Sandel for doing this with us and bringing this opportunity with us. It was a blast to create, and for Dr. Klein for all of thought and perspective, and for helping create partnerships that have flowed from the CME, and then also Malika for everything, but helping create this and being such an integral part of this process.
And we
Great, fantastic. Oh, sorry, Lauren, go ahead.
Oh, no, I just wanted to also express our gratitude right back at the Concussion Alliance. We also had a lot of fun producing this, and your work is amazing, and we appreciate the opportunity to share it.
Yeah, and thanks to all of you. This was a great session. It was really interesting getting all the different perspectives. Appreciate all of you coming on and sharing your information. Let me go through a couple of my end slides here. Just a reminder to everyone that our CMEpalooza scavenger hunt is currently ongoing. You can find our sponsors URL, Skin, Bones, Hearts, and Private Parts, on our webpage. It's right on the live page, or you can just go directly to it and look for the CMEpalooza logo and click on that. We do have a survey that if everyone could take at some point during the day, if you want to wait to the end, that's fine. It's also on the live page. You'll see a link on there for that. We do use your feedback as we were planning the next CMEpalooza. A number of these sessions have come directly from that, so please take a moment to fill that out when you have time. And to view the next session, you can just find the link for it on our live page. The next session coming up is My Data Once Out, session sponsored by Integrity CE and Medscape. I have been assured by Scott that he fixed the little glitch that I had at the beginning, so that you won't have someone mumbling into the screen trying to figure out how to get the program started when it actually has been started already. Anyway, and a major shout out to Matt Fries for doing this from the airport. Seamless. Great job, Matt.
Thanks, Derek. Not ideal, I know, but
people
thank you.
enjoyed seeing the random people walking in the background. So
Appreciate the opportunity. You guys are great.
Sure. Anytime. So thanks, everyone.
Don't leave your bags
next
unwashed,
session,
everybody.
Yeah. Next session will start right at the top of the hour at 10 a.m. And thanks to all of you. And we'll see all of you soon.